This story's about high school sweethearts, just starting out in life, just starting out in love, dedicating their time to one another without a care in the world except spending time together forever. If only they knew just how close forever really was for them.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kimbyrleigha. If you've never been here before, nice to finally meet you. Before we get into today's case, I would like to thank our sponsor for today, and that is Lots of Slots. And I'm actually really excited for today's sponsor because I've never done a sponsorship like this before. This is a new one for my channel. I used to live in a casino hotel in Atlantic City when I was 18 years old, and this brings back so many memories. I used to work at Trump Plaza selling casino memberships on the boardwalk, and of course, every now and then, I would get my own casino card as a thank you, and I would go play the slot machines. Lots of Slots brought back so many memories. It's a free-to-play mobile slots game that you can play anywhere, anytime. So it's like bringing the casino into your home with all the excitement and the sounds and the music, and it really just changes my mood instantly. There's already 31 million players from around the globe enjoying Lots of Slots, and it's super easy to get started. I also want to show you how I like to play and win, and the game that I think is the most fun. We'll get there in just a second, but all you have to do is click the link below in my description box or scan the QR code on the screen to download Lots of Slots. And don't forget to add my exclusive invitation code. I'll put it up on the screen right now, and it will be below as well, and you will get an extra $5 worth of coins. You can discover an endless array of thrilling slots that'll keep you entertained for hours on end. And with new slots released every week, you'll never run out of exciting options to choose from. And if you have never tried a game like this, I suggest you give it a shot, because sometimes we need to take our mind off of whatever is going on and do something that's not so serious. I know that that's how I am. Whether you're a fan of the classic Vegas-style slots or you prefer the latest and the greatest slot games, this app has it all, including stunning visuals, immersive sound effects, and thrilling bonus features. My absolute favorite slots theme is the Bing Oink, and it features this cute little piggy, and I always win big, or shall I say, pig when I play it. I just had to do that. My favorite thing is to do auto spin, and I raise my bet high enough to win. Another popular one that's a classic Vegas slots game is the Yin and Yang, and the themes are so much fun. And in April, this slot game already clocked more than 100 million spins. That's a lot. Lots of Slots has even more. It goes way beyond the average slots game. It has plenty of opportunities to play games, so you can always have enough coins to keep spinning. For example, the mini games, you can play them for coins that you can play the slots with, like the Space Battle game, or you can spin the Golden Wheel. I personally like to play the Space Battle when I want to get extra coins because it's fun and it reminds me of a pinball machine. Look at the little spaceship, just earning me a bunch of coins. It's also Lots of Slots' 6th anniversary, so download and use your free ticket to enter the live show raffle, and you can get a chance to win an iPhone 14, an Apple Watch, iPad, and more. And they'll be sent to you in real life, like these fun items I just got. Let's open it up and see. I'm excited. I got a bunch of stickers, which I really love. Look what it is. This is going right on my phone case. Oh my gosh, I love the stickers. Okay, that's gonna be my favorite thing so far is the stickers. They're so cute because they're all the little icons from the game. I got a little keychain. Ooh, I'm excited about that. It's a coin. And it says happy birthday on the back. It's almost my birthday too. We got that. And then we got a little phone stand thing so that you can just slap it up on your desk and play while you're supposed to be doing other things. And then a puzzle, which I'm really bad at puzzles, I'm not gonna lie, but this is a cute one. My daughter claimed this already, but it's a really nice backpack. Really cute. Lots of pockets in it. Ooh, it holds your laptop in there and stuff. That's really nice. So click the link below or scan the QR code to get 5 million coins and spins now. And don't forget to enter the raffle to win big prizes. And thank you so much to Lots of Slots for sponsoring my channel and making this video possible. Now let's get into the video for today. This is one of those stories that terrifies parents, especially those who have teenagers. It's the age when children become more independent, not yet adults, but no longer a kid that remains within the confines their parents have set in place. It's time for rebellion, risk-taking, and finding out the hard way that life isn't rainbows and butterflies. Yet so many parents try hard to protect their children no matter what age, because they will truly always be our little babies. No one could have expected what was going to happen in this case, and no one could have offered protection. That is what we fear the most, the unthinkable. I want to begin by introducing you to Bodhisattva Natasha Sherzer-Potter, who is affectionately known as Bodhi. She's probably one of the most, if not the most interesting person that I've ever had a chance to talk about on this channel to date. I wish that I could have known even more about her. My research went on and on and on. I could not stop reading all about Bodhi. She's so fascinating to me. Her name is what stood out to me first, of course. I was instantly reminded of Nirvana, and I don't mean enlightenment. However, that's exactly what Bodhi means. But I meant Nirvana as in Kurt Cobain, who I was absolutely obsessed with growing up. Though unrelated, Kurt had an imaginary friend that he called Boda, who he eventually wrote his final letter to before taking his own life. When I heard the name Bodhi, it reminded me of Boda, and I was intrigued. I wanted to know all about this little girl whose parents gave her such a unique name. Bodhi is a Buddhist term for enlightenment. It means the knowledge or wisdom or awakened intellect of a Buddha. And a Bodhisattva is a person who's on that path towards this enlightenment. Bodhisattva is also known to symbolize wisdom and compassion and kindness. And those are qualities that Bodhi's mother saw in her from the moment she was born. Bodhi was born in Newport Beach, California to Rick Potter and Lorraine Leah Sherzer-Potter, both psychologists, with an 8-year-old son, Zen, who became a big brother on July 19th, 1991, when Bodhi came into the world. If you've been here before, I want to try to get things right, especially people's names and how to pronounce them. But as you probably can tell, I have a unique name, and I don't always know the exact way that someone preferred their name to be pronounced. Bodhi's mom, Lorraine, went by her middle name, which is spelled Leah, but that can mean Leah, Leia, Lay, or even Lee sometimes. Mine can be Leah, Leia, Lee, Lay. So I'm going to go with Leah because that's the way it is pronounced online. So if I am wrong, I sincerely apologize. But Rick and Lorraine were in their 30s. They were just starting out in their careers and their life. And Lorraine, going by Leah, would go on to specialize in working with autistic children and becoming a school counselor. Rick practiced counseling and psychotherapy. If you didn't catch the name that Rick and Leah chose for their son, it's Zen, as in another Buddhist word, most commonly known for the state of being in meditation towards enlightenment. Very unique names, which I assume came from Rick and Leah's own belief system. It must have been important enough to them to name their children the way they did. Even though through my research, I did find that Leah was Jewish, or at least celebrated Jewish traditions like Hanukkah, for example, and visited the temple with Bodhi in pictures. I wondered what the connection was between Buddhism-related names, and I was so curious as to how the couple gravitated towards Buddhism to begin with, but it is one of the world's largest religions. Maybe Rick and Leah were in a phase of their spiritual awakening when they had their children. I don't know. Or perhaps they studied about Buddhism in psychology, which I know I did. Whatever the reasons, Rick and Leah were interesting parents to have. They are very educated, lots of information to bestow upon their children, and it paid off. From the very beginning of Bodhi's life, she was ahead of the curve, scoring above her peers in all the typical developmental milestones. It helped to have an older brother that she could model her behavior off. She and Zen were very close. Bodhi was enamored with her big brother from the beginning, and she aspired to match his achievements. She looked up to him like many little sisters do. Having parents that are both psychologists that know all about the mind and how it works was an advantage. Bodhi talked constantly, therefore her vocabulary expanded very quickly, faster than her peers. As she progressed academically, she was always the youngest in her class, ahead of the other children her age, and she was also the tallest, so she stood out physically as well. Because she looked and acted more mature for her age, her teachers always expected more from her, and Bodhi delivered because she was a born overachiever. She was also athletically inclined. She started doing gymnastics in kindergarten until 2nd grade when she began playing basketball. She even won a few awards for her skills on the basketball court. Bodhi's parents had her in piano lessons starting in grade 3, and she really enjoyed playing piano. She took lessons until she was in 5th grade, and she even did voice lessons, and people that knew her said that she had a very beautiful voice and a natural talent for music. One memorable time was when Leah said she had to cut Bodhi's hair really short because it was so hard to manage with all of her activities. Everyone thought she was a boy, but it was much easier for Bodhi, who was into everything. She loved going horseback riding, going on adventures with her family, and she even began to develop a love for photography as well. She may have actually gotten this from her dad. He took up photography himself, and he loved to travel, and he was known to be quite the adventurous explorer. Bodhi definitely got the best of both of her parents. However, it wasn't long before Rick and Leah parted ways. As much as they probably had in common back when they met, people change, and sometimes that means growing apart. In 1998, when Bodhi was only 8 years old, she left Newport Beach with her mother and her brother, and they relocated to the high desert out in a place called Helendale. It's over 2 hours away, but it might as well have been a world away because it's night and day compared to Newport Beach. Look how the terrain changes on the map as you're leaving Newport and entering Helendale. It's 100 miles away from the beach. What a culture shock it would be for many people making this move, that's for sure. Newport Beach is awesome. I love it. It's an upscale coastal city in Southern California. It's well known for its luxury living right on its beautiful beaches. Growing up in Newport Beach can be a unique and idyllic experience. It's home to some of the best schools in California, and Newport Beach is also a very safe city with a low crime rate and a well-funded police department. This can provide a sense of security and peace of mind for parents with young children. Moving from Newport Beach out to the desert would be quite a change. But now that Leah was a single mom, she had to do what she could do to give her children the best that she could at this phase of their lives. I can't tell you why she chose Helendale. I really can't. I know my first thought was, who would want to live here? It's in the middle of nowhere, and there's nothing green. It's just desert for as far as the eye can see. Look at it on this map, and then look at it zoomed out. There's just nothingness. It makes me thirsty just imagining how hot that it would be there. But one draw is that it's way more affordable than somewhere like Newport Beach. And it has its perks. It's a small, close-knit community with a focus on outdoor recreation, education, and community events. It's an ideal place to live for those who value natural beauty, affordable living, and a strong sense of community. But then I think about the fact that it's off Route 66 in the middle of the Mojave Desert. And if you don't know anything about Route 66, it's one of the most famous roads in the United States. I'm sure that you've heard about it at least once by reading a book or hearing a song. It's a cultural icon that represents the American dream of freedom and exploration. And it's become a symbol of American culture because back in the 30s and 40s, the highway provided a direct route from the Midwest to the West Coast, and it was a lifeline for communities along the way. It stretches from Chicago, Illinois to Santa Monica, California. And that's great as far as historical significance goes, but it's also known to be associated with a number of hauntings. And I don't know how much you believe in all that, but the Phantom Hitchhiker is one of those stories. A ghostly hitchhiker is said to haunt a section of Route 66 near San Bernardino, California, and this is close to Helendale. Drivers have reported picking up a young woman dressed in 1930s clothing, only to have her disappear from their car before they reach their destination. Spooky, right? Who knows if it's true? But what I do know is that there's not much going on in Helendale, so it might as well be called a ghost town, haunted or not. But wait, there's something I haven't told you. There's something in Helendale, or should I say somewhere in Helendale, that might be worth living in such a desolate place. I didn't show you this part of Helendale yet. It's called Silver Lakes. This is the main draw to living out in the middle of the desert. Silver Lakes is a private community that Leah and the kids moved to. Now, interestingly, this part of Helendale is like a small pocket of the high desert that's in its own little world. It's situated around 2 man-made lakes that get their water from the Mojave River. And it's pretty incredible to see these 2 huge lakes in the middle of the desert. It's not a mirage, it's real. This area includes more than 2,000 homes, a golf course, equestrian facilities, and lots of amenities. So this is where you want to be. This is the best of both worlds, feeling like you've escaped the hustle and bustle of a place like Newport Beach. But if you want to live like you are eternally on vacation, because the homes look like they're on a resort. They're upscale. They've got pools, tennis courts. It's like living in a real desert oasis. Leah's plan? To work and live here while they make plans to build their dream home right here on one of these beautiful lakes. It would have everything they could wish for, and Bodhi was going to help design it. But that would have to come later. For now, they'd still get all the perks of living in this area, including the schools. And Leah had her sights set on one school in particular for her daughter, the Academy for Academic Excellence in Apple Valley. Now it's called the Lewis Center for Educational Research. It's a TK through 12th grade college preparatory program with a STEM emphasis. It's a charter school. And according to their website, the academy prepares for post-secondary success through a relevant, rigorous college preparatory education. They engage in integrated learning experiences that promote global mindfulness, critical thinking, and redefined use of technology, whatever that means. And there's a waiting list. Of course there is. You gotta love the scarcity marketing tactic. But it's a highly sought-after educational program, a hidden gem of a school tucked away in another small town 40 minutes away from Helendale. This school has 1,000 students and a waiting list of 3,000. It's selective about enrollment and maintains smaller size classes in order for the attention to be given to each student. So now they wait. By the time the move happened, though, Zen was already in high school, and he preferred to live back with his dad. And he attended Estancia High School in Costa Mesa, where his father was living at the time. It's just about 15 minutes inland from Newport. Now it was just Bodhi and Leah all day, every day. And their bond became even stronger. Bodhi had an incredibly close relationship with her mother. Leah hardly let her out of her sight. And some may call her a helicopter mom. Others would say, you only get one childhood with your kids, so make the most out of it. Keep them by your side and protect them at all costs. When Leah was at work, Bodhi actually shadowed her. And throughout this experience, Bodhi gained a deeper insight into human behavior and a unique perspective on the world. One that not many children have a chance to develop, especially at such a young age. Leah taught Bodhi how to think like a psychologist and all about all the different mental disorders and how to help people. This is what Leah said about Bodhi. She said, quote, she often followed me in my work with autistic children and assisted me, and they loved her, end quote. Bodhi does seem like a person that many people would love to get to know. Over the next few years, as she was growing up, Bodhi was an energetic little girl who loved to talk and explore her surroundings. She was very adaptable. She had an incredible imagination, and she made up detailed stories to entertain her friends and her family. She was like a sponge. She was able to learn anything within minutes, extremely observant, and would pick up on even the subtlest details. She was definitely the type of student the Lewis Center looked for, and by the 7th grade in 2004, she was around 12 years old. Bodhi was given a spot at the private charter school, and now she was busier than ever before. She was also changing a lot, as many tweens do at this age. She and Leah were not seeing eye to eye like they usually did, as Bodhi was developing into her own person. But they still had their moments. Just a few years before this, Leah had purchased land to build their dream home. And there was a time when the two of them had a magical moment that they would replay for years to come. They stood on the bare plot of land pulling weeds and admiring the view on the lake. Bodhi was observing her surroundings, and she told Leah that the water would reflect on the ceiling of their living room once it was built, and that the chandelier they planned to install would reflect prisms of color near sunset. And Leah kind of challenged Bodhi, saying, how on earth would you know that? Especially since they would have had to set the house back at least 10 feet or so in order to put in a pool. But Bodhi, she just smiled back confidently and looked a bit surprised, as though she wondered, why would I even need to explain this at all? Like it was obvious to her. But she said, CAD helps, Mom. CAD is the abbreviation for computer-aided design. This is a program that people use, especially architects, to create precise drawings intended to be used as a model for the actual structure they're building. And apparently Bodhi was already familiar with this, and she was only 9 years old. She already had a love for architecture. To me, she was like a savant. She went on to explain to Leah that the house would be at least 28 feet high, the tallest house, which meant there would be no obstruction, and it would face west. So if they put in French doors with glass panes off the front balcony, the sun would shine through and reflect off the chandelier. She added that they would probably need to have a 3-tiered chandelier. Wow. She was able to ascertain all this at such a young age. That's extraordinary. Bodhi studied for hours every night, sometimes for 4 hours or more. She had a tutor in math and spent hours perfecting her understanding and proficiency in that subject as well. But in her spare time, she loved writing, and she became an avid journalist, keeping a number of diaries full of life experiences, thoughts, and poetry. At times, Her writing would even get a little deep and dark, like this excerpt. Quote, "Something is eating away my creativity. Every time I try to get these thoughts and images out of my head, they come out twisted and mangled and not what I wanted them to be." End quote. Then from poetry, she went into writing songs. Music was fundamental in Bodhi's life. She constantly had an earphone permanently affixed to one of her ears. I can relate, my daughter always has headphones on, always. And Bodhi would listen to her iPod. She couldn't wait to share her music with her friends. Although Bodhi was gifted in many ways, her true love was music. It made her feel alive. And as she got older, movies and the dream of Hollywood began to be increasingly important to her. She would often watch classic films and join movie clubs to learn more about filmmaking. She even got a new camcorder, a video camera, and loved filming videos. One home video that I saw was of her talking about her wishes. One was to change someone's life, change the way they think, make them somehow better, make them like themselves more. Here's that video now.
My first wish would be to be able to have a camera that could see anything that my eyes saw. And my second one, just produce anything that I saw in my head. I can't remember. It would be to read people's minds. I liked that one. That would be a good wish.
That was great. If you could fly, be invisible, or read people's minds.
I'd read minds, and then I'd be invisible, and then I'd fly.
Cool. Very good.
And I'd want to talk to animals too. That'd be cool.
No, that would be cool.
To be able to know what they're thinking. Always wondered that.
That'd be excellent.
Another one would be to be able to change someone's life with a movie or with something. They just change the way they think, make them somehow better, make them like themselves more.
Very cool. Awesome. Yay!
With her sights set on Hollywood, I even saw a painting on her bedroom wall, one that she probably painted herself with the word Hollywood. It looks like it's Hollywood Hills. This could have been a constant reminder to her to go after her goals. She was making selfies a thing before they even really became one. Her self-portraits were her specialty. Leah shared them on Facebook and said that Bodhi took a lot of pictures like this because she had a campaign against mediocrity. She was determined not to sell out, meaning give up her creativity to survive. This picture is about being jailed from her art, something she knew she could do well. Her craft was taking real life and turning it into a meaningful story. Storyboards, writing, photography, and film. She was a walking creative genius. That was a quote from her mom. Leah has so many of these stories. There was another one that she shared on Facebook. Leah said, quote, "One day we decided to do a Mommy and Me project, and Bodhi picked out 4 of her favorite sayings, and we framed them and placed them on her bathroom wall. These are the sayings Bodhi picked at the age of 13. Conor Oberst. In truth, the forest hears each sound, each blade of grass as it lies down. The world requires no audience, no witnesses. Benjamin Franklin. Alas, I know if I ever became truly humble, I would be proud of it. Proverbs 31:30. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised." And finally, John Lennon. A dream you dream alone is only a dream. A dream you dream together is a reality. Wow. Those are really meaningful quotes. Something else happened when Bodhi was 13. She changed. It was tough on Leah, who had been so close to her. They used to spend so much time attached at the hip. They'd bake bread together on Sundays and give it to their neighbors. They would watch old films together. They'd have mommy and me time, even did photo shoots with one another. But Leah said that on Bodhi's 13th birthday, she walked out of her bedroom a different person. And Leah struggled to find her Bodhi again. But Bodhi's compassion for humanity didn't seem to change. Just her need to be independent from her mom did. That didn't stop Leah from trying to remain close to her daughter. She took her on a cruise to celebrate her becoming a teenager. 13, that's a big deal. Leah bought her a black and white brand outfit celebrating her becoming a teen. Here's a picture of Bodhi and her mom on the cruise ship. She was just learning how to wear heels, according to Leah. And it makes me sad to think about this separation happening as our kids get older. But Leah knew it was just part of her life. And she did the best to give her some freedom to feel independent, but she still kept Bodhi very close to her. She wouldn't even let her walk to the local grocery store alone. And I don't blame her. Bodhi's friends gave her the nickname Hollywood because everyone knew it was her dream to end up there. She began pouring her heart and soul into avant-garde films and stories that she created to go along with them. Leah said that Bodhi's teachers described her as talented, intelligent, with a bright future. She was inspired to become a film producer, and she was articulate, funny, caring, and a talented storyteller via multiple medias. She was driven to make a positive impact to all who knew her. She was also known to have a really good sense of humor, which attracted a lot of friends her way. And when kids become teens, friends start to matter more than family, for a while anyway, and then things usually revert back to being family first. Bodhi became a very well-known figure in the hallways of her school. Her peers and her teachers respected her and enjoyed her presence. Not only did Bodhi have friends close by, but Leah made sure that there were other ways for her to broaden her horizon and spend time outside of her small town. Back when they moved to Silver Lakes and Zen relocated to Newport with Rick, Bodhi would visit her father and older brother on a regular basis. As Zen became more independent, Bodhi would be permitted to spend time with him at his own place. Being 8 years older, the family trusted Zen and allowed Bodhi to visit. She would spend time accompanying him at his workplace, meeting his colleagues and friends, and spend weekends with him. Leah would make the 2-hour drive down there so that she could visit her brother. And during these visits, the two would spend time together watching movies, eating a bunch of junk food. They were the best of friends. It didn't matter what they were doing. They could be just hanging out watching a movie or chatting. It was clear that they had an unbreakable bond that was incredibly special. It was always exciting for Zen when Bodhi visited him. He loved bringing her to work. His colleagues would welcome her into their offices, and she was always curious to learn more about Zen's coworkers. She was eager to hear all their stories and their experiences. Zen worked in technology. For example, Mastech was one of the companies he worked for. It's a telecommunications business. He went on to work as a systems technician for AAA Auto Club in Southern California, where he focused on IT, security systems, and monitoring their network performance, among other duties. Zen even worked for the Walt Disney Company. He was their systems administrator for a few years, starting in 2007, when Bodhi would have been in high school. Now that would have been a cool place to visit with him. Anywhere she went, Bodhi was often the life of the party, and she just made things fun. Of course, as a big brother, Zen always wanted to protect his little sister. But growing up with an older brother, Bodhi became pretty tough. She could throw a solid punch, and she was very independent. So as they got older, Zen became more of a friend than, the protective older brother. He knew Bodhi's strength and independence, and that she could take care of herself and didn't need him to be her protector. Although there were times when Zen still tried to be that overbearing older brother. He was trying to show his love and his care for Bodhi, and the only way he knew how. Still, Zen was amazed at Bodhi's resilience. He never had to worry about her. He knew how smart she was. She could figure out almost anything. Besides, she had someone else to protect her. By 2007, Bodhi was in high school, like I mentioned, and she was going to the Lewis Center. And during her sophomore year, she met a guy named Cody Thompson. They met in film class. It was taught by Mr. Steve Orsinelli, and Bodhi and Cody, they just hit it off. They were a perfect match. Even their names rhymed. Both of them were nicknames as well. Cody was born Christopher Cody Thompson, but he used his middle name instead of Christopher. He was a senior when Bodhi and him met. Cody was born February 10th, 1989 in Victorville, California, to parents Pamela and Michael Thompson. Upon his arrival, Cody's two older sisters, Sarah and Katie, they were filled with enthusiasm because they got to pick his name. Cody's parents held high expectations for their newest family member. They were confident that he would be a valuable and capable addition to their family, and their intuition was correct. Cody grew into an ambitious and driven young man, but of course, he still had a playful, fun-loving side. A lot of little boys do. He would entertain his sisters with farting, burping, pinching, teasing, tickling, and tackling them, but they loved every minute of it. They playfully referred to him as Spaz. Cody loved the outdoors. He couldn't get enough of it. He loved to ride his bike in the desert. He would climb anything that he would come across. And one of his favorite movies, he would replay it over and over again, was The Brave Little Toaster. It's an animated film about, a brave little toaster and other appliances who go on these adventures together. And sure, he liked to watch movies, but his parents could hardly keep him inside. He loved animals, watching NASCAR races with his dad, and they shared a special bond together. They worked together restoring hot rods, and Cody proved to be an excellent mechanic. He was good with his hands and didn't mind getting them dirty. He enjoyed camping, fishing, hiking, rock climbing, riding quads. Even his mom, Pam, she joined in on the fun with Cody as well, and they bonded through the endless hours they spent four-wheeling in their Jeeps together. They loved it. And Cody was always ready for the next adventure, and he went on a lot of them. He kayaked and snorkeled, he climbed Mayan ruins, he camped in Big Sur, he rode four-wheelers. He spent so many countless evenings around campfires laughing with friends and family. It sounds like there was never a dull moment in the Thompson household. His sister Sarah loved taking Cody to amusement parks, and his sister Katie and her husband Trent enjoyed showing him the best of Washington State where they lived. They would do some fun four-wheeling out there as well, and as he got older, his sister had kids, and he loved showing his nieces and nephews everything. He was a great uncle to Lauren, Rylan, and Clara Rose. Cody attended Sandia Elementary School before he was enrolled in the Lewis Center Academy for Academic Excellence in Apple Valley. Cody's musical talent blossomed from a very early age, starting with the clarinet, and then he eventually progressed to the guitar. He showed a natural aptitude for music, and his parents encouraged him to pursue his passion by enrolling him in music classes and buying him musical instruments. Hanging on the wall of Cody's bedroom were 4 guitars, and 2 more sat by the foot of his bed. Cody was so musically inclined that he could pick up almost any instrument and just start playing it right away. His mom was always amazed by that, and so were other people who witnessed it. Cody also had a great sense of humor. He was witty, and he liked to outsmart his friends by pranking them, which he did on a regular basis, and he found a lot of joy in it. He sounds like a lot of fun. I can definitely see why him and Bodhi would get along. And by 2007, Cody was a senior and had been a teaching assistant for 2 years in Mr. Orsinelli's film class. Steve chose him for this position because of his skill set and because he was one of the nicest kids that Mr. Orsinelli had ever had the pleasure of teaching. I think I can tell why Cody and Bodhi would be attracted to one another the way they were. They have so much in common, except Bodhi was the only girl in her family, and Leah was very protective of her. She even admitted she would practically hold her daughter hostage, not letting her go anywhere by herself. So you can probably imagine what it was like when she found out that Bodhi had a boyfriend. Yeah, it wasn't exactly a positive experience at first. Leah wasn't very happy that her daughter was dating Cody. When she met Cody, she thought he looked a little too rough around the edges, too old to date Bodhi. And she told him that. She said, "You are too old for my daughter." She sat with him at the kitchen table just looking at him. But as time went on, he won Leah over. He was always very respectful, and Leah could tell how much he loved Bodhi. Their love for one another was apparent. Leah could tell and told others that they were very much in love. And soon, they were spending all their spare time together, which wasn't that much for Bodhi. She studied for hours on end after class, most nights until 11 p.m. She was very committed to her future, but also to Cody, and the same was true for him. They made time for one another. Even when Cody graduated and he was working with his family's business, waking up at 4 a.m. every morning, he would make the drive back to Apple Valley to pick up Bodhi from school and drive her home. Leah said Cody was very sweet to do that for her, and that he was the frame that framed Bodhi. Back then, a lot of teens had cell phones to text and to keep in touch. They're not like the ones today, but back then, the technology seemed advanced. Teens also had their own computers, and it's the time when social media was just taking off, and I remember this. Many people were on MySpace social media. I'm sure you know what it is, or at least heard of MySpace. Basically, it's like Facebook, except it was more connected to the music scene at the time. There were a lot of bands that were trying to get recognition on MySpace, and with both Cody and Bodhi's love for music, and just because of the simple fact that it was popular among kids their age, they spent a lot of time on MySpace. So did I. There wasn't much for teens to do where they lived. It's actually something that Bodhi would complain about to her mom on a frequent basis. Bodhi thought that there should be more dedicated places for teens to hang out and do things together. Well, sometime in 2007, while scrolling MySpace, Cody finds out about a place where teens were going to hang out, and it looked cool. There were bonfires and music and dancing, and no parents. It sounds like the perfect place for kids that age. The spot was out in the middle of the desert, about 30 minutes away from Silver Lakes. This area is home to a relic of the past. I love doing little history lessons, but it was built in 1941 with 4 runways in a triangle shape. 3 of them were 5,600 feet, and 1 was about 4,900. That was the runway in the middle. And this place was used as a World War II training field for practicing landing and taking off. It's located near Hinckley, California. And if this sounds familiar to you, think Aaron Brockovich, one of my favorite movies, Hinckley, the small town where PG&E had their plant that contaminated the drinking water. And that was the huge focus of the lawsuit in the movie. Yes, lots of history here. The water from Hinkley Well. Never forget that. But what is so special about this place that it would attract teens in the 2000s? Well, it's because of what was created later in 1965 during the Cold War. The U.S. Air Force built a 2-story bunker out there, which is an underground shelter. And in this particular one is where they erected a radio relay station. This is so cool. This was a 1,200-foot guide wire radio tower. It's almost as tall as the Empire State Building, so it was quite a sight to see. The purpose of this radio was to communicate with various agencies and to provide strategic air command communications before, during, and after a nuclear attack. The location was surrounded by a number of military bases, so it was in the perfect location, and the bunker underground was created to withstand a moderate nuclear blast from almost 10 miles away. And inside this bunker underneath the ground, there were power and communications equipment. At the time, this system was very high tech, believe it or not, and advanced and costly, with 50 people being on duty 24 hours a day. The runways weren't being used at this point. They were abandoned. But here's what it looked like from the ground. That structure, that's the bunker. And most of it is underground and made of cement, with different corridors and rooms that would contain supplies and things for protection in a nuclear war, for example. But as the technology advanced even further, the communication center was no longer needed, and the radio relay site was closed in 1985, and then the tower was finally removed in late 1986, and this was quite an event. It got a lot of news coverage. Demolition experts from the U.S. Air Force, they detonated explosives and they brought it to the ground. I found a few news clips I wanted to share.
$1 million transmitting antenna today and did what they do best. Bob Banfield was there as it fell down.
150-foot transmitting antenna at the U.S. Air Force Haas radio relay station in the Mojave Desert between Barstow and Kramer Junction was constructed in the mid-1960s to transmit emergency action messages to SAC bases across the United States. The tower, a navigational hazard, had to come down.
People came all from all over today. They brought their children, they brought their cameras. The Air Force brought the explosives, and with just one push of a button, this radio communications tower would come tumbling down. There she goes, almost in one piece. The Air Force decided it just didn't need the tower anymore, so it blew it up.
What was once this landmark in the area was now gone. The tower and the equipment were scrapped, but what was left behind was that 2-story bunker, and it was left open. At first, it attracted scavengers, just trying to find anything that was worth some cash. But over time, it became an attractive nuisance. This is just a way to say that it became a place that attracted teens and vagrants to the area that could potentially be dangerous for them. But by the time Cody found out about this place, it had evolved over the years a lot. And by 2007, it was a known party spot, but it had been a place for a lot of other things, like drug addicts to shoot up and live, target practice for gun enthusiasts, gangs used it as a place to hide and hang out, and it was a location for Nazi lowriders, a white supremacist gang. They met there, and they weren't the only gang to do so. And there was a lot of graffiti sprayed on the walls. Swastikas could be seen among gang symbols, artist tags, and different groups hung out there who definitely didn't have the best reputations. They would claim it as their own until the next group took it over. And like I said, this place is in the middle of nowhere. It had no electricity, and at night, it would be completely dark. And that attracted arsonists and teens that just like to blow stuff up. I found a video on YouTube from a guy named Adam Williams. He would take his Jeep off-road there. It was a fun place that you could just drive fast in the dirt. That's how you would get to the bunker, this long dirt road. This video shows him coming up to it. This is the way it looked during the daylight hours. The entrances were wide open, with remnants of past antics still seen outside on the ground. Whether day or night, once inside it's pitch black, which Adam and his friends liked in this video because they brought gasoline and poured it inside and lit stuff and watched it explode and burn. In this clip, he lights something and throws it down a hole in the bunker. Then he watches the glow from the explosions, and it can be seen from above. In the comments, someone named Mark Raymond asked, "What did you drop into that hole in the roof?" And Adam responded with, "We just dropped a piece of cardboard that was lit in through the hole from the top after pouring about 5 gallons of gas down it first." Then he added, "Aerated gasoline is fun." Mark responded with deadly too, and went on to say that he had a strange memory of this place since he was there when it was still a working transmitter. He said that the hole in the roof is where the antenna feed came out. It dropped into a small room that was accessible from a crawl space inside, and the crawl space went into a massive room near the ceiling, and you would need a ladder to get up and down. The place had some old but fascinating electronics in it back in the day. That comment gave me an eerie sense of what it was like inside this bunker. And that video showed me what teens could do inside unsupervised. Look at what else Adam did. There was another explosion, and this one was even powerful enough to damage the light he was using. You can hear a girl laughing in the background, just amazed at what just happened. I kept thinking, what if someone would have been sleeping in there and they just lit it on fire? It just didn't seem like the safest place to play around like this. It really reminded me and gave me flashbacks of the abandoned house in the Anastasia Kriegel case that I did back in March. I'll link it below, above in the cards, and at the end. It's very creepy. In 2003, the Air Force began planning to demolish the bunker so that the Bureau of Land Management could reclaim this property. But in 2008, the bunker still stood on the land. And there you have it. As the years passed, the abandoned bunker in the desert slowly transformed from a forgotten relic to a popular hangout spot for local teens. They throw parties, raves. They would catch up with friends and hook up with each other in the bunker. It became a tradition. And inside, it was littered with graffiti and debris from generations of teens who hung out there. This bunker was the place for teens in Hellendale, and in Silver Lakes and Apple Valley, and beyond, to meet for late-night parties, Cody included. He started going out there in 2007 with his friends. He even mentioned it to his teacher, Mr. Orsinelli, who freaked out when he heard about it. He said, I would never go out there. But Cody was like, it's no big deal. It's just an abandoned military facility. It wasn't much of a shocker to Mr. Orsinelli because it's the desert. There's abandoned mines, bombing ranges, old military bases all over the place. But still, he had never seen a bunker like that before, and he didn't think it was the best place for Cody to hang out. This was a student that he really admired for being a great kid with a promising future. But teens will be teens, right? Apparently, Cody invited Bodhi out there a few times as well. Remember, she loved architecture. She was fascinated by the bunker. And she was actually super excited to show it to her mom. She told Leah about it. She said she thought it was really cool. Bodhi loved taking pictures, and the bunker just drew her in. It was December 2007. Bodhi was 16 at the time, Cody was 18, and Bodhi told her mom she wanted to take her out to the bunker to show her just how cool it really was. And by this time, she and Cody had been dating for about 8 months. He had a Jeep like the one I showed you that guy Adam had in the YouTube video, and he took it out to the bunkers with Bodhi. And now she was driving out there with Leah on one afternoon filled with enthusiasm, but Leah didn't feel the same. Not at all. As soon as they pulled up, Leah had a bad gut feeling. She thought the place felt cursed, but Bodhi couldn't contain her excitement. She promised her mom it was so cool. She couldn't wait for her to check it out. She wanted her mom to share in this enthusiasm. She loved the nostalgia, and she wanted her mom to agree, but she just didn't. She got out of the car, and so many thoughts were crossing her mind. She didn't like this place. She didn't see the appeal. The two of them were just out in the middle of nowhere, and she thought if something were to happen, no one would find them. She looked down and she didn't even have cell service on her phone, and this scared Leah. She couldn't match Bodhi's excitement because her mind raced with terrible thoughts. And as Bodhi brought her inside the bunker, these thoughts intensified. This was during the day. Leah could only imagine what it would be like at night. Here's what it looked like through the open portion of the bunker while the sun was up. It was an interesting place, but what about at nightfall? Leah couldn't hide her fear. She was appalled. She told Bodhi, this place wasn't cool at all. It was frightening and dangerous. Bodhi tried to convince Leah otherwise, but the more she fought, the more Leah made it clear she didn't approve of Bodhi being out there. And she told her, you're never allowed out here again. And she could tell that this hurt Bodhi. All that excitement was just deflated. Leah thought maybe sheltering her daughter all these years had made her a bit naive, even as smart as she was. Bodhi saw the bunker as a place for freedom from constraints of society. She thought her mom was just overreacting and holding her back, which a lot of teens think we're doing. A lot of angsty teenagers, they just don't think their parents are cool anymore, that their parents don't get it. and they won't understand, that they can't relate to what they believe is worthwhile. Leah explained that this is totally unsafe. There's no self-service, and she wouldn't know if Bodhi was in trouble. She would be SOL out there. She worried so much about Bodhi going out there and told her, you just can't be here. It's not safe. She said, give me the keys. We got to get out of here. When they got back in the car, she did what a lot of us do as parents, and she tried to relate to her daughter, saying that she understands, that she thinks it's cool, but she's too worried about Bodhi. And she just sat there in silence. She was tuning out her mother's voice because she had already made up her mind at that point. She knew that she was going to do what made her happy and what brought excitement to her world, even if it meant going against her mother's wishes. What teen hasn't done that, right? And what mother doesn't try to protect their child from harm? We know better, don't we? We've lived a lot of life, yet our kids just think we're uncool, and we're trying to keep them from having fun. Bodhi was too mesmerized by the bunker's mysterious aura to heed her mother's warning. By the new year, Bodhi had off from school, and Leah drove her to Newport to visit Zen before classes started up again. And by this time, Bodhi was a junior in high school and a student at both the Lewis Center, and she was dual enrolled as a college student taking a class at Victor Valley College. She planned on going to LA Film School once she graduated. She wanted to become a film director, and Bodhi had once said, quote, I want to take the camera and film what my mind's eye sees, my emotions feel, and my heart needs to say, end quote. Her mom said that was the influence of psychology on her art, that Bodhi had a way of putting life into words in a way that most of us couldn't. Students usually have the holiday off, including the New Year, and in 2008, that would mean they would probably have started back up Monday, January 6th. Plenty of time to have fun with Zen in Newport on the last weekend before Bodhi had to get serious again. Leah drove her down and expected to pick her up a few days later on Friday or Saturday. That way she could have a day or two before school started to get organized. However, this visit was different. Bodhi had her own agenda, one that she didn't share with her mom or her 23-year-old brother. She told her mom she wanted to see Zen, but really, she wanted to go hang out at the bunker, using her brother's house as a decoy. Things were completely as they usually were at first, until Friday, January 4th, the day that Leah was supposed to be picking up Bodhi to take her back to Silver Lakes. But behind the scenes, Cody had planned a birthday/New Year party out at the bunker for about 30 to 40 of their friends from school in Apple Valley. But they also posted the information about the party to MySpace, hoping to make this the event of the new year. Come one, come all, the more the merrier. There'd be bonfires, and you can BYOB, bring your own beer, but also BYOT, bring your own tree, Christmas tree. That's because how else are they going to start a fire in this big fire pit? They're going to burn Christmas trees. There was no way Bodhi was going to miss out on this. So she enlisted the help of a friend, Andrew Peterson. He would pick her up at Zen's and drop her off at the bunker to meet up with her group of friends, including her boyfriend, Cody, who was busy organizing the whole thing. It was Friday, January 4th at around 5:45 p.m., and Bodhi calls her mom. She said, Mom, there's no point in coming down here. My friend Andrew is going to be down here visiting his family. And Leah was like, oh, wait a minute, he has family down there? What a coincidence. And Bodhi's like, yeah. He's just seeing some people. I'm going to go ahead and hitch a ride with him back home tomorrow on Saturday. Leah trusted Bodhi. She didn't give it much thought. She just figured, that works fine. It makes sense. Saves her the trip, 2-hour drive. So now Bodhi would be coming back the next day on Saturday. And Leah makes sure to tell her, make sure Andrew has you home by noon. And Bodhi says, that's fine. She says, I love you. Bye, Mom. Leah ends that call and calls Zen to let him know the new plan. He didn't really think it was the best idea, but Leah reassured him it's a trusted family friend, not to worry. But they never really discussed what day this friend was coming. The thing is, Bodhi told Zen and her mother 2 separate stories about what she was planning to do. She told her mom she would be back Saturday, but told Zen she was leaving that night on Friday. That meant there would be a good 12 hours when Zen thought she was home with Mom, and Mom thought she was with her brother. Both of them trusted Bodhi. They didn't think to fact-check the story with one another, and it was already evening by the time the plans were made and set into motion, so there wasn't time to think about whether anything was out of the ordinary. But just a couple hours later at 8 o'clock on Friday, January 4th, Bodhi's friend Andrew arrives at her brother's house in Newport Beach. He picks her up. They drive out to the desert. They go through that long dirt road to the bunker where Cody and his friends are already gathering for the celebration. Everyone is in high spirits, and the festivities were starting to begin. A bunch of the teens brought their own discarded Christmas trees from the holidays, and they used it to light this bonfire, and that made the night even more special. The flames just lit up the dark sky. Everyone was enjoying the warmth of the fun and the atmosphere, and there isn't any video of this event, but similar ones I've seen that I've looked up, they have music playing from parked cars since there's no electricity, along with the headlights that would illuminate the area while everyone was drinking and partying and exploring. We can only assume what the teens were doing that night. The plan was that Cody and Bodhi and a few of their friends were going to camp out in their vehicles under the stars after the festivities ended. Bodhi's friend said that she was into weird and spooky stuff, so this is in line of what would excite and amuse her. The bunker consists of hallways and hidden alcoves leading to different rooms and gaping holes in the roof that have 30-foot drops like the ones that we saw in that YouTube video. Inside, there are literally thousands of spent bullet casings, broken pieces of glass that crunch under your feet as you make your way through the dark hallway of the structure. The party roared on until about 2 a.m. when people started to call it a night. By about 4 a.m., the last few people were making their way out of the bunker and on their way home. The friends who planned to camp out with Cody and Bodhi, they changed their minds. They got sick earlier in the night and they left already. So it was just the couple getting cozy in Cody's Jeep, tired after all the fun they had. The night was peaceful and serene, and the stars were twinkling brightly in the dark sky above. They began to drift off to sleep until they heard a noise. It was Cody's cell phone ringing. Yes, unbelievably, you can get cell service sometimes in certain areas. It was a friend of Cody's who had been at the party with them. He could tell that Cody had been asleep when he called, so he's like, "I'm sorry, were you sleeping?" And Cody's like, "Yeah, it's okay. I was, but what's up?" His friend asked, "Have you seen my iPod?" And Cody looks around and he saw it. So he tells his friends, "Yeah, it's here." The friend was glad that he hadn't lost it in the chaos of the party. And he said, "Hey, can you hang on to that until we hang out again?" And after reassuring his friend he would, he hung up, and Cody and Bodhi just lay in his car and drift off to sleep together. They had no idea their tranquility was about to be shattered in the most horrific way. Around about 4:30 in the morning, Leah was awoken by a pain in her chest that felt like she had been stabbed in the heart. She sat up in bed and she just felt so uneasy she couldn't go back to sleep, so she got out of bed. She was pacing. She walks outside to get a bit of fresh air and she sees a raven just cawing like crazy. And this was odd to her because they don't do this at that time of the day, so early in the morning. This was also Bodhi's favorite bird. So Leah looks at the clock, knowing it wouldn't be long until Bodhi called her because it was a ritual. Whenever Bodhi wasn't home, every morning at 6:30 in the morning, she would call her mom right when the sun came up. She walks back in waiting for that 6:30 phone call, but it never comes. And that's when Leah really started to get a bad feeling. She began pacing the house. She felt like something bad had happened, but she couldn't figure out what it was. She felt like it was mother's intuition. So she began calling Bodhi. No answer. She left a message, all kinds, text messages, voice messages, just trying to get in touch with her teenage daughter whom she hadn't seen in days. Nothing. Knowing that Bodhi had plans to be driven home by her friend Andrew that day by noon, Leah decides to call him. But again, there's no answer. She tried calling Zen a few times and finally got a hold of him. And Zen is confused because remember, he thought that Bodhi was being driven home on Friday night, the night before, not Saturday afternoon. So of course he explains this to his mom, who tells him Bodhi never came home. And they're both shocked and they're worried. But Zen just assumes Bodhi had pulled a ruse in order to stay the night with her boyfriend, Cody. He thinks that they're probably just back at Cody's house. He had no idea that the two of them had attended a party at the bunker the night before. But Zen was actually pissed at this point. He felt lied to, and he wanted to know who this Andrew guy was that came to get his sister, and he really didn't care if it was a family friend. He wanted to give him a piece of his mind. But he wouldn't pick up his phone. Cody wasn't either. So around 10 or 11 o'clock, Leah decides to call the police. She's panicking. This was out of character for Bodhi. Even if she had lied to hang out the night before, she wouldn't just not answer her phone like this. However, it's the same song and dance we've heard so many times before. She explains to the dispatcher that her beloved daughter Bodhi had gone missing. She asked them for help. And unfortunately, this dispatcher told her that without sufficient time having passed since Bodhi disappeared, they couldn't do anything about it. This isn't true, by the way. March down there anyway. We hear this all the time, but it's simply not a fact. You can always go down to your local police station and report your child missing, especially if they're under 18 like Bodhi was. Leah didn't know what to do. Then her worries only increased when she received a phone call from Cody's mom, Pam. Pam asked Leah if she knew where Cody was because he never came home the night before either. That's when Leah admitted that Bodhi was missing. The realization that the young couple had not been heard from by both of their families filled their mothers with dread. They knew something was wrong. 2 more hours go by. It's around 2:15. Cody and Bodhi's families were more than worried. In a desperate attempt to find their children, they reach out to the teenagers' friends, and a few of them admitted that they were at a party at the bunker the night before. Leah's worst nightmare had come true. Maybe she was right. Maybe the place was cursed. A few of the friends decide to volunteer to drive out to the bunker where they had seen the couple the night before. When their friends arrive, they see Cody's Jeep. It's parked right outside, just like it was the night before. But the driver's side and passenger side doors are both wide open, but no sign of Bodhi and Cody. Seems kind of odd. Why would they have just left the doors open like that? So they spread out and they cautiously approach the bunker to look inside. It feels eerier than usual given the circumstances. What happened to their friends? They called out their names, they're using flashlights to look inside, and they're walking through different corridors, looking for their friends that they just left behind a few hours before. As one of the teens enters the bunker, he saw something. It looked like a pair of jeans. As he got closer, he realized it's a person. It was Cody. He was lying face up, his knees folded underneath him as though he had been sitting on his knees and just fell backwards. His arms, they were outstretched above his head, in front of his head. And then he saw his face. His friend saw that one of his eyes was missing. He's terrified and he runs out of the bunker and he tells his other friends that Cody is dead. So they get in their truck and they speed away as they dial 911. And somehow the word traveled faster to the teenagers and the friends of Cody and Bodhi before the police are even there to investigate. This led one of these teenagers, a girl from Bodhi and Cody's friend group, to call Leah around 3 p.m. She says something that would really be unusual and almost even cruel. She said, "Do you know that Cody was shot?" Wow. To get the news like that, so nonchalantly, someone just blurting something out like that, it had to have been shocking. And at this point, Bodhi was nowhere to be found. But this mystery caller informed Leah that Bodhi was last seen with Cody inside the bunker the night before. Leah, she can't even hold on to the phone. She runs to a nearby friend's house and she asked her, "Can you please accompany me to the bunker?" So many thoughts were rushing through her mind. At this point, she was wishing the worst was that Bodhi had been taken by someone but managed to escape. And maybe she was wounded, but she would be okay. These are the thoughts that go through our minds. We're trying to make sense of everything. We don't want to believe anything bad has happened. But when someone tells you that your daughter's boyfriend has been shot, I don't know what I would be thinking. By the time Leah and her friend make that 30-minute drive out there, the police are already stationed in front of the bunker, along with many teenagers who had been at the party the night before. More and more teens arrived as the word spread, and it created a large and growing crowd outside. Despite the gravity of the situation, the teenagers were not deterred, and they continued to come in groups. They wanted to know what happened to their friend. As Leah got out of her car, the police went over to her, and once she identified herself as the mother of Cody's girlfriend, and that they were looking for her daughter Bodhi, they escorted her to a trailer that they had parked outside the bunker as a makeshift police station, where they began asking her questions. She still didn't have any information about Bodhi, which made it very difficult for her to think about anything else. She wanted answers. What happened to Cody? Who did this? Was he injured or was he dead? The police weren't giving her any details. Leah was in this trailer until 2 o'clock in the morning. So from 3 o'clock until 2 o'clock, that's like 13 hours sitting there. I can't imagine waiting that long for answers when it's your own child and her boyfriend involved in something dangerous, something deadly. One reason that it's taking so long was because This wasn't a normal investigation. The crime scene, this bunker, it was not typical. So when the police from San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department arrived on the scene, it was apparent within minutes that this was going to need a lot more resources. Even in the middle of the day, once inside the bunker, you can't even see your hand an inch away from your face. It's that dark inside. Watching as much true crime as you have, I'm sure you know what goes into an investigation. Everything needs to be sorted through. Evidence needs to be collected. But if you can't see what's in there, it's almost impossible. Plus, they had no idea what the layout of this bunker was like. It's not like they had a map or a blueprint. It was a foreign structure to them, full of winding corridors, all kinds of different rooms, debris, dirt, you name it. Even armed with regular flashlights, it was very hard to make out what you were looking at. So they needed to bring in generators, high-powered lights to illuminate the interior of the bunker. When police arrived, they were informed of exactly where Cody's friends said they saw his body. And sure enough, as they make their way to that location, they indeed found him. They can tell that he had at least one, maybe two wounds on his body, definitely one in his head, and it looked like there could also be one in his chest. Of course, they want to get him out of there so they can really examine his injuries, but he's also evidence, and everything around him is too, so they must wait. Cody is pronounced dead, and plans are made for a team of homicide investigators who come in and take over the scene, led by Detective Rob Alexander. Now police have to deliver the devastating news to Cody's family, and they are very private. They remained private about their version of events and their story and what they went through, which I can completely understand and respect. So there isn't that much information about how all of that played out, but what I can tell you is that Cody's father lost his best friend. Cody wasn't just a son to him, they did everything together. And Cody's mom, Pam, said that Cody was loved deeply and loved deeply, and she stopped existing the moment she found out he was dead. She also told police that she did know about the bunker, but she didn't know that Cody went out there last night. Once more resources were brought in, including high-powered lights and other investigative equipment, teams were moving in to try to collect evidence and figure out how this happened. Meanwhile, they're still looking for Bodhi, but it doesn't take long to find her. As the bunker was illuminated, they see a blue sleeping bag on the floor not too far from where Cody's body was found. Inside the sleeping bag, they discover the body of Bodhi Sherzer-Potter, lifeless, also shot in the head and chest, laying on her stomach with the sleeping bag kind of wrapped around her waist. How absolutely horrifying to think that she was having a fun night with her friends, celebrating a birthday party with high schoolers and spending the night with a guy that she loved, only to end up on this cold cement floor with the life and promise just stolen in the blink of an eye. She was fully clothed, and it didn't appear that she was sexually violated in any way. Neither Cody or Bodhi were wearing shoes, only socks, and they were mere feet from one another inside this dark, abandoned bunker. So what happened? At first glance, the investigators had to at least rule out that one of them could have possibly shot the other and then turned the weapon on themselves. But it was plain to see that there was no weapon present, and they had been shot with a shotgun, which is typically not easy for someone to use on themselves in this manner. Not to mention, they were both shot more than once. You kind of can't do that if both of the wounds would have been proven to be fatal. By the next day, January 6, 2008, Leah had been informed that they located a female body. However, they had not confirmed her identity, so they couldn't tell her it was Bodhi. They needed to do a full examination and determine that it was in fact Leah's daughter. But she said she knew in her heart that her daughter was dead. When she heard a female was found, Leah felt an intense pain in her chest. She knew in her heart that it was Bodhi. If Cody had been shot, she knew Bodhi would never have left his side. She loved him too much. Bodhi's murder wouldn't be confirmed until days later when a coroner did confirm the remains belonged to her. They delivered all of her jewelry to her mother. And that's when things became real. They would never get a chance to see Bodhi again. Leah was in total shock. She would never hear Bodhi's laugh again, never know what she could have accomplished. And Leah is very connected spiritually. She's intuitive, she's open-minded, and she truly believes that she felt her daughter's presence. Even if you can't fathom this being true, understand that if this is someone's true feeling, it can be real to them. And we can never really know for sure what happens after death. The mind and body are still a mystery to us in so many ways. Leah believed that Bodhi came to her in spirit. Leah could feel her energy. Not only that, she felt like Bodhi had a message for her, and then she heard her daughter's voice. She said, "Mom, don't feel guilty. You told me 1,000,000 times not to go out there. I love you, I love you, I love you." And then she faded away. After that moment, Leah's world became a haze. Zen was now by her side, and they were devastated. He will never forget the moment he found out. It was the worst moment of his life, and he had to relive it again and again, sometimes in his nightmares. He had looked forward to a future with his sister, and now that dream was gone. The loss of Bodhi was like a heavy stone weighing down, crushing his heart. No one could understand who would do something like this. There were so many questions, and so many people being questioned at this time because all the partygoers were being interviewed by investigators who were shocked and puzzled by the senseless and brutal murder of 2 teenagers from good families. Even seasoned investigators were horrified by this crime. It seemed so callous and evil. What was the motive? Who would have wanted 2 high school sweethearts dead? Was there an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend? Were there drugs involved? Did someone have a grudge against them? And then maybe they waited for this exact moment after the party to commit this crime. They just didn't know. The couple's murder shocked their community. They were well known. They were loved by their peers and their teachers, and the news of their tragic deaths shocked everyone. Mr. Orsanelli told the reporters, "It's surreal. You think these things will never happen to you. When you know someone and they die such a horrible, violent death," he said, "my wife and I cried ourselves to sleep last night. These were not bad kids. They were great. Whoever did this, they had to be the lowest form of being on earth," end quote. One of their classmates, a 17-year-old Braxton Boyd, said that the crime was horrific. "You didn't meet many people like Cody, people who you don't have to worry will stab you in the back. I never went to the bunker, but Bodhi was into that kind of stuff." Rick Piercy, the president and chief executive of Lewis Center, said that the slayings caused some soul-searching among the staff. He thought that there had to be a way that they could do something differently to protect these kids. Why didn't they know about this place? But now they did, along with hundreds of other people from the surrounding communities. And many of them were making the trek through the desert to catch a glimpse of this bunker in person. And even from beyond the crime scene tape, just to be able to see it with their own eyes was something to see. Many said that they felt uncomfortable just being near this location. How was this place allowed to be wide open to the public? Who was responsible for the structure, and why wasn't it blocked off all these years ago? That was the question that kept being repeated by residents in this community. It was shocking that the government had just left this place to just sit there and rot, ultimately leading to an unthinkable tragedy like this one. It was obvious to so many people that this place was dangerous, yet nobody did anything to prevent something like this from happening. Robert Powell, he was a retired engineer. He visited the bunkers after the murders and said, "I can't believe the federal government would just leave a place like this without a fence or anything. The police are well aware this place exists and should have been in the forefront of closing it." He added that they could have pumped it full of sand to close it up, or they could have blocked it up with cement blocks or get a bulldozer out there. In 1 hour, the whole thing could be bulldozed to the ground. He even added that if they left him alone with a case of C4 plastic explosives, he could probably get rid of the place. I have to agree. So much could have easily been done to prevent the bunker from becoming an attractive nuisance. But right now, the police and investigators are working hard to find out who is responsible for pulling the trigger and ending 2 innocent teenagers' lives. In the aftermath of these murders, a petition was started in order to have this bunker demolished. And according to the Los Angeles Times article that I read, no one was eager to claim responsibility for this bunker. The Federal Bureau of Land Management, they reportedly oversaw this area, yet the Air Force was responsible for getting rid of the bunker. So people speculated why there wasn't at least a warning sign up at the site. And one of the rangers said, "The way that the desert is, it'll be shot down or torn down." But to me and a lot of other people, it just seemed like laziness. It could have saved lives. But apparently the Air Force said they were making plans to destroy it since 2003, but still nothing had been done. As the investigators interviewed partygoers and teens who had been at the bunker in the past, one of them, named Matt, said he went out to the bunker a year ago, but some scary guys came up to him and his friends. They had shaved heads and looked like they were in a gang. So they decided this place was not for them. One mom named Donna Cannon, who lived in Helendale for over 17 years and was one of the principals of a nearby Riverview Middle School, said that she never knew the bunker existed until her daughter told her about it, saying that her and her friends hung out there. And it was a very popular place on Halloween for teens to gather. Apparently, there was a room with a hole in the roof that had no exits, and once you were inside, it was so dangerous you couldn't even get out of it. This may be the same area that guy Mark commented on YouTube about. Like you had to have a ladder to get out of the crawl space. And that's terrifying. Through these interviews, though, investigators find out, in addition to telling their friends about the party by word of mouth, it was also posted up on MySpace, and that other people may have been in attendance. People that they didn't know. So investigators were eager to find out about every single teenager or person who was at the bunker that night. Who they were, where they were from, and whether they were involved in this double homicide. Most of the teens were actually students from Apple Valley. They were not troubled, they didn't have criminal backgrounds, and they had alibis for the night after the party concluded. They find out that the last call Cody took, and the last person to speak to him and know that he was alive with Bodhi, was the friend that called asking about the iPod around like 4 or 4:30. So they have this timeline of when the murders may have happened. Sometime after that call, and of course, before Cody's friends located his body. By January 8th, the investigators had collected every single can, every bottle, cigarette butt, shell casing, and other items, and had hand dusted them all for prints. Hundreds. It took days and days to process this scene. There was so much evidence that they accumulated. Here's a picture of Detective Alexander going through the hallways and sifting through debris outside looking for clues. They wanted to know exactly what type of shotgun was used so they could locate the correct casings among the hundreds of others that were left behind by people doing target practice. There were a few similar casings found near the victims' bodies, so those were collected, and then there was a press release that was sent out. Homicide detectives were requesting information from anyone who was at the bunker and had seen anything or anyone out of the ordinary. They also seized computers from the victims' homes to see if they could find out if either one of them had been talking to someone who could have done this. But they didn't find anything. And Leah felt bad that she couldn't provide any help because she was totally useless. She was a mess at this point. She wasn't there. She wasn't mentally stable. You can only imagine. Bodhi was her entire life. There were times when Bodhi would even joke about it. She would say, "Mom, you need to get a life." And she would say, "I'll get a life when you're 18. So Leah's world had fallen apart. And Bodhi's friends had gathered in her room, which was now like a shrine to her memory. They wrote notes to Bodhi on her mirror and markers. They sat together and cried and prayed and played music and talked about how wonderful she was and how much they miss her. Leah invited them to come over because she said Bodhi would have wanted it that way. Several days after the discovery of Bodhi and Cody's body, their loved ones came together to honor their lives. A large crowd gathered at their high school. It was filled with grieving relatives, teachers, and classmates. They were all on the football field. The ceremony was full of tears and hugs and stories about Cody and Bodhi and how much they meant to them. Yet no one was coming forward with any information that led them to a killer. Investigators were working this case nonstop. It was the most important case, getting the most coverage in the media with the most pressure on them to get it solved. Detective Alexander said, quote, "We have put everything aside to work on this case," end quote, and emotions are running high. There was one piece of information that stood out to investigators. Friends of Cody and Bodhi said they remembered some guys coming out to the bunker that were not part of their friend group. It was probably 3. They were maybe in their late teens, 17, 18 years old, and they pulled up in a Honda Odyssey van around 11 or 12 midnight, asking if they could join the fun. And the friends said, yeah. The 3 guys got out of the vehicle and they had a bottle of raspberry-flavored Bacardi, which they were passing around. They were mingling with everyone. Who were these guys? No one knew. They didn't even ask their names. Nobody remembers them leaving. So unless this next thing happened, they may not have found out who did this. On January 13th, investigators get a phone call from a guy named Sean Gonzalez. He says he has information about the crime. Sean explained that on the night of the murders, he got a call from his friend David Smith, asking if he wanted to join him and a couple buddies at a bunker to go shoot some guns. He declined the offer because, according to him, David was acting psycho. Then later, after the murders, Sean gets another call from David asking, "Did anyone contact you asking about me and whether I was at the bunker?" He says, "If anyone does, I wasn't there." And he sounded scared. And when Sean kind of inquired about what he meant, he said he couldn't talk about it over the phone, but that it was something life-changing. Eventually, Sean is able to get more information out of David, a lot of information, which he gives to investigators. He said that his friend David Brian Smith, 19 years old, from West Covina, which is about an hour and a half away from Helendale, this friend David told him that on the night of January 4th, after asking him, "Do you want to come out to the bunker?" he went there with two of his friends, 18-year-old Colin Lee McLaughlin and his 16-year-old friend Cameron Thompson. They were looking for a place they could rob that night, and they heard about this party on MySpace and thought that they'd be able to steal from the partygoers. So they waited until the party died down. They left with the crowd, but came back to see if anyone was still there. When they drove up, they saw Cody's Jeep parked outside. And apparently, they banged on their windows with their guns drawn, and they woke up a frightened and confused couple that was sleeping inside. Cody pleaded with them to leave them alone, that they didn't have any money, but instead, the guys ordered them to get out of the Jeep and force them into the dark bunker at gunpoint. Bodhi had tried to put on her shoes, but one of them told her there was no need for shoes, and he made her exit the car without them. He said that Bodhi was pretty feisty and had tried to resist, but they had a gun to her back, so she had no choice but to listen. They marched the couple inside. Can you even imagine? These were complete strangers. Bodhi and Cody had done nothing wrong. To think these were their last moments together, that breaks my heart. No one like them deserves anything like this. It's evil. It's pure evil. And this couple was ordered to get on their knees, still pleading for their lives. But the order was repeated, and both of the teenagers dropped to their knees. Still, they tried to reason with the guys, saying, we can help you get money. Please don't hurt us. We won't tell anyone about this. But instead of having even the littlest bit of compassion, Colin shot Cody right in the face in front of the love of his life. Honestly, it sickens me and it traumatizes me to think about this. If I really think about the terror, how Bodhi would scream the way that they said she did, and how she told them, "You'll face God for what you did to him," and Colin responding with, "There is no God. That's why this is happening to you. That's why we can do this." Bodhi tried to run, and Colin yelled to David to shoot her, and then he put another bullet into Cody's back for good measure. It's unclear at this point whether David had actually listened to Colin and shot Bodhi, or whether Colin killed both of the teenagers. But he did instruct David to pick up all the shell casings. All of this came out of bragging, because David seemed to be proud of what he did. Like it was funny, watching these poor teenagers beg for their lives like it was a joke. Because Sean came forward, the detectives had an idea of what occurred that night. Now they needed to track these guys down. Sean agreed to show the detectives where the three men lived. After obtaining their addresses, they get search warrants and were able to locate the weapons connected to the crime, as well as other incriminating evidence. On January 17th, Colin Lee McLaughlin and David Brian Smith, along with Cameron Thompson, are arrested on charges of attempted robbery, kidnapping, and murder. After the arrests, many other people come forward, and they tell the investigators that they also heard David and Colin bragging about committing these murders. At this point, Bodhi's mother is visited by investigators at around 11 p.m. that night. She did thank them so much for their hard work, finding out who these possible suspects of the couple's murder were, but she knew this process was not over. She knew she would have to hear the horrific details of her daughter's death, something that no mother should ever have to experience. But why? Why Bodhi and Cody? Why? Detectives take a deeper look into the three young men that were being held without bail. Their first stop is MySpace, where they find Colin's profile with photos of him holding a pistol grip shotgun in one photo and a handgun in another with the caption, "Make my day." Just look at him. If that's not a sign of what's to come, maybe these other things should have been. Wait until you hear about what was on his MySpace page. He called himself an equal opportunity merchant of death, whatever that means. And he wrote, "I entered this world covered in someone else's blood, and that's how I intend to leave it." Wow, I swear that that's a quote from a movie or a song. It kind of reminds me of the show Dexter, when Dexter's a baby sitting in his mother's blood in the beginning of the story about his childhood. Except in Colin's case, this isn't Hollywood. It's real life. And he goes on to write, "If you don't read this, I will sneak into your house late at night and kill you." In another post, he said, "Maybe you can outrun me, but can you outrun a bullet?" It's like a mixture of immaturity and rage and just pure hatred. Then he outlined his perspective on the world with a numbered list of 10 things he believed in. And I'm not going to go into each and every one of these things. I'm not. But I will share a few with you. One of them said, "I feel that if a person really needs it, they should be able to walk down the street with a .357 killing people." He also stated that if he could, he would sell his next door neighbors into sex slavery in Mexico. And he's not antisocial. He just doesn't like people. Colin also used 5150 in his display name, which is the penal code for danger to oneself or others. Under his interest section on MySpace, Colin lists sex, 420, fine cigars, and liquor. His heroes, famous psychologists Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, as well as Russian communist Vladimir Lenin. So who is this Colin kid? Why is he so angry with the world? I really wanted to know. And if you're anything like me, there isn't closure until you understand why something like this happened to Cody and Bodhi. First things first, Colin's dad was a retired police officer for Los Angeles Unified School District. And coincidentally, David Smith's dad was also a police officer. So they're both in law enforcement. But focusing on Colin first, my research showed that he was raised in a very tumultuous home by his parents, Wayne and Linda McGuigan. His father, Wayne, drank heavily. His mother, Linda, was absent all the time, leaving her young son to fend for himself. Colin's upbringing was far from ideal, and this was as a result of his parents fighting nonstop and neglecting him. Colin grew up with a father who kept a collection of guns in his house. These guns were often left lying around inaccessible, and from an early age, Colin suffered from a variety of mental health issues. At the age of 5, he was diagnosed with ADHD and developmental coordination disorder. This is actually a motor skill disorder. I'd never heard about it before. It causes a child not to be able to perform daily activities the same way other kids do at their age. They can appear to be more clumsy. Because of his background, Colin developed aggressive inclinations at a very young age. His kindergarten teacher said that he had an alarming understanding of Civil War and weapons of that era. He was in kindergarten. She also noted that he struggled with listening and connecting with others, which grew worse as he got older. One of his middle school teachers said that Colin was clever but very quiet, and he struggled to fit in. He was alienated and frequently left feeling lonely, which hindered his academic performance. She said, "In the years I knew him, he was always the kind of kid who wanted to be known. He wanted to be someone. Well, now we know him. And sometimes that's why I don't say much about the people who chose to do these awful things. They don't deserve recognition, but I also want to understand them because I want to know why." Colin had attended 7 different schools by the age of 17, as well as attending 2 boys' homes and a juvenile center. His demeanor made it difficult for him to connect with others. He would appear to be troubled, like just looking at him, you knew something was wrong. And as he got older, other diagnoses were made, including oppositional defiant disorder, chronic depression, thought disorder with psychotic features, bipolar disorder, and drug and alcohol abuse. He was considered by at least one of the dozen psychiatrists that had seen him to be beyond repair and a danger to others. When Colin was just 15 years old, I found this to be really shocking and disgusting, but when he was 15 years old, his mother shot a video of him drinking 100 proof vodka, Jägermeister, and tequila, and puffing on a cigar until he vomited violently into a bucket. The footage showed Colin's mom, Linda, laughing at her son, cheering him on. She could be heard yelling, in the bucket," as he continued to take drinks and smoke a cigar and vomit. And it was like his mother enjoyed watching her son get sick and suffer the consequences of these actions. She was interviewed about this, and she revealed that she had challenged him to prove that he could drink anyone under the table. She said it was because he bragged about it so often, and she wanted him to prove it. But what kind of mom even thinks about making her son prove something like that? After this challenge, she claimed Colin stayed away from alcohol for 6 months and stated at no time was he in any medical danger. Okay, So this was what, exposure therapy? I really don't think so, because I think it sounds like straight up child abuse. He's a minor. On April 20th, 1999, the day of the infamous massacre at Columbine High School in Columbine, Colorado, a former middle school principal of Collins recalled a specific incident that happened. It was reported that Colin had repeatedly taunted his classmates and said that he was going to go home and get a gun and come back and shoot them. The principal took immediate action and suspended Colin. Then in 2004, Colin began his first year of high school with high hopes. However, just 1 year later, he was expelled. And it was because he reportedly threatened 4 students and was planning to harm others. A police officer who responded said that Colin told a friend that he wanted to get in the trees at school and use an AK-47 to snipe people. That's not normal. Authorities were shocked because when they searched his backpack, they found a variety of sketches depicting explosive and guns. In addition, 2 pages of writing were found, and this looked like it was some kind of dialogue that Colin had been having with himself about the harm he wanted to cause and his warped belief system. Here's an actual sketch he made. It shows balloons that are filled with propane. They have detonators on them and rope holding them down, and this is supposed to be the quad of his high school. The ropes would be soaked in kerosene, and he would release the detonators, killing as many students as possible in this crowded part of his school. The incident caused Colin to undergo a psychiatric evaluation, one of many, as you know. He spent 3 days under doctor's care, and that's when he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. But he was released, and then he got in even more trouble, and then he appeared in court when he was 16, and at that point, the judge classified him as a ticking time bomb, just like his drawing, set to go off at any moment. But then in 2007, just about 1 year before the murders of Cody and Bodhi, Colin McLaughlin appeared in juvenile court. His probation officer and his mom reported to the judge that Colin's progress had not been adequate, but despite the reports, the judge, for whatever reason, decided to terminate Colin's probation 2 months before his 18th birthday. This was just 5 months before the tragic killings at the bunker. Wow, why is this always the story that we hear? If you know he's a danger, why is he being let free? However, Colin did continue to visit his psychiatrist even after the murders. His last session was on January 15th, 2 days before his arrest. The psychiatrist later said that Colin did not have any real sense of what the world was like, and that his narcissistic and self-centered attitude drove the perception he had of what was around him. He also claimed that he attended college at Mount San Antonio in Walnut, California, but the investigators made a call to the school, and they didn't have any record of him attending whatsoever. It seems like society and the law really failed here. There were definitely signs that Colin was not stable. The fact that he was able to get a hold of a gun and commit this crime is really sad. But wait, because you have to hear how he actually obtained the murder weapon. A year before this, Colin actually admitted to his friends that he really wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone. Yet nobody came forward to report this to authorities, even though these same friends said they thought he was psychotic. One of them called Colin a nut and said that it's no joke, Colin had been in hospital at one point. And in the months leading up to the double murders, Colin stopped taking his medication to treat his bipolar disorder. His father was so concerned about his erratic behavior that he took him to a doctor so that he could get him back on psychotic medicine just a couple weeks before the killings. And his father allegedly locked up his guns because he was afraid for his son to have access to them. So what happened? Well, his co-defendant, the youngest of the 3 to be arrested, Cameron Thompson, same last name as Cody but no relation, he told police that in early January, a few days before Colin and David went to the bunker, Colin started talking, quote, stupid stuff and said he wanted to go shooting in the desert and kill someone because he was bored, end quote. Cameron also said that he was acting crazy the day before. And despite his dad having these grave concerns about him, he actually permitted him to borrow his own shotgun and Mini 14 rifle for a campout when Colin called him on the afternoon of the murders. That is how he gained access to the weapons. 2 innocent teenagers were killed because his father granted him access, knowing how unstable he was. Why? This is a disturbed person who actually shared his dark fantasies with his friends and was obsessed with mass murder. Why would his friends even want to stick around? But speaking of friends, now that we know all about Colin, Let me tell you what detectives dug up about David Smith. Both he and Colin pleaded not guilty at their preliminary hearing. The judge appointed a public defender for Colin, who was identified as a shooter, and he set his bail at $2 million. He was facing a minimum of 111 years in prison or life. David Smith, he was represented by a private attorney, and he was given a $1 million bond, and he faced up to 81 years in prison. As investigators delved into David Smith's background, they quickly realized that his life was not like his friend Colin's. David was raised in a Mormon family. His father, James Smith, was a police chief for a small city called St. Anthony's in Idaho. All accounts show that David was intelligent, he was very gifted, he was a former Eagle Scout, and he attended UC Riverside on a track scholarship. But despite his brilliance, David had difficulty keeping himself out of trouble with the law, and he was involved in several petty crimes prior to the murders. The chain that links David and Colin was the third perpetrator, the youngest of the trio, Cameron Thompson. He was friends with Colin and introduced Colin to David since both of them were interested in robbery and petty theft. It's a great thing to have in common. He brought these two together, and ultimately, they would become the deadly combination. Cameron told investigators he took no part in the murders and he didn't know anything deadly was going to occur. He was merely the lookout, thinking that his two armed friends were just going to rob the couple. However, how could that be true when just days before, Colin had admitted to him, "I just want to kill someone because I'm bored"? It doesn't add up. By February, bids were coming in from subcontractors to destroy the abandoned bunker. And then they announced demolition should begin in May of 2008. By April, it was already underway. Here's a picture of the crew tearing it down. The entire demo only took about 4 weeks to complete. A spokesperson for the Air Force said, "It took a long time to begin this because over the years, there were environmental issues related to the desert tortoises. And they wanted to make sure that none of them were harmed in the demolition." I love animals, but I did find it interesting that they secured a bid from an environmentally friendly demolition company called EarthTech, and they put up a fence to make sure the tortoises were not going to go inside the bunker. But this wasn't for humans. And I understand the concept, the teens could have just climbed over the fence. I get it. But I just kind of thought, wow, they put up that fence right away, but didn't do anything for so many years. The courtroom was filled with emotion during the preliminary hearing. While Bodhi's mother and other relatives showed up for both the victims, Cody's parents, Pam and Mike, they could not. When they were asked why, Mike Thompson said, quote, "I don't know if we're going to be able to go and sit there and stare at them," saying that it was not a good idea for them to see the men suspected of murdering their son. Despite not being present in the courtroom, everyone in attendance felt the Thompsons' pain and their heartache. It would be very difficult to face your child's killer. To even know that those two words combined exist, your child's killer, I can understand why they couldn't be there. This devastating event was especially heartbreaking for the couple because they had just lost their 2-year-old granddaughter, Madeline Bell. She died in a car accident a year before. And after losing a grandchild, the couple had to revisit that pain when they lost their son. What a cruel world we live in sometimes. It's so heartbreaking. And Pam expressed the difficulty that she was having accepting the loss of Madeline. She said, "It's been a terrible time trying to recover from that loss. I guess I'm still in shock." The couple needed to be strong, and they relied on one another for strength. They told the media how much they enjoyed when Cody's friends visited them and shared stories about Cody with them. They had heard so many stories about their son that they weren't a part of, and it was a great way for them to get a different perspective on their son. Pam loved it when his friends would visit because she believed that each one of them was a little piece of Cody. I feel so bad for these parents. It's just unreal what they have been through, and now a trial, or maybe not. That's right, because it was postponed numerous times. There was always something preventing it from going forward. Meanwhile, friends of the beloved high school sweethearts gathered to remember their lives in a benefit concert. Several of Bodhi and Cody's favorite bands performed in honor of them and to raise funds for their families. This event was a celebration of life, bringing friends together in grief. And the benefit also featured a local tattoo artist who donated her time and effort to the cause. She offered tattoos to patrons throughout the night, with all proceeds going directly to Bodhi and Cody's family. Cody had been into tattoos, and he had just gotten one on his forearm before the murder. Here he is showing it off. Now the pain of his loss is tattooed on the hearts of his loved ones. More shocking news came out in April that same year. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office reported that a deputy was at the bunker hours before Cody and Bodhi were killed. According to reports, a deputy was at the scene, though it was unclear if he ever had contact with Bodhi and Cody. A spokesperson for the sheriff's office said that the deputy did not see anyone intoxicated or drinking alcohol. They said, quote, there was no juveniles there. They were all over 18 and we talked to them and he told them it was an unsafe place, but he didn't tell them to leave. And afterward, the deputy left the bunker after he extinguished a bonfire, because that's what actually brought him there. He saw the smoke and a fire. But this is not what Bodhi's friend said happened, and Leah was furious when she heard a different account of that night. According to Leah, she was told the deputy chased after the teens in Cody's Jeep, and they eventually were stopped and they had to confront him. She said that the deputy proceeded to question the teenagers. Leah was appalled when Bodhi's friends told her the deputies let the teens go without any consequences for their irresponsible behavior. The one question Leah kept asking herself was, why did the officer do nothing when it was clear that they were underage and drinking, that Cody was visibly intoxicated, according to witnesses, and the kids were in danger? I know this is a lot to take in, but I can't leave this case without telling everything that happened and how it ended. In February 2009, prosecutors announced their decision to seek the death penalty against Colin McLaughlin. They were seeking life in prison for his co-accused David Smith and Cameron Thompson. And in light of this decision to pursue the death penalty, Colin's trial was moved to a different county because the original venue did not have the power to try a death sentence case. But at this point, Colin pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. His father testified that his son became violent when he didn't take his medications. In 2010, 2 psychologists examined Colin, and they concluded that he was sane at the time of the murders. However, Colin's defense attorney was not convinced. He didn't have faith in these doctors. But regardless, it didn't matter what he thought, because the plea was overturned when it was discovered that Colin was overheard in his jail cell discussing ways to pass as crazy. You know what this sounds like to me? This sounds a lot like Miss Letitia Stouch. Did anyone watch that case? Leave it in the comments. Because Dr. Lindsay Elliott, she was a Newport Beach clinical and forensic psychologist who was hired on behalf of McLaughlin's legal team. She thoroughly reviewed his psychological and family background. You know what she said? That this was the most pervasive case of mental illness and complex family dynamics that she'd seen in the 11 years that she'd been doing this. She did over 30 death penalty cases. And Leah shared the same sentiment in a way, because she said, as a psychologist, quote, I can explain in finite detail how our system failed us in the family, in the police department, in the school system, and finally in the lack of courage as a professional to act. Those were many, but that Colin was not insane, that this was a case of bored anger. He knew what he was doing. She said, the combination of being born in a family of a policeman and a mother who could not hold him accountable, he looked for boundaries beyond the home. She said sociopaths are not sensitive to their victims' pain, only their own. And Bodhi's articulate open heart skills could not reach him. No sincerity can reach the cold, self-serving place he lives. He needed ultimate power. This ultimate power fed his lack of self. No physical, emotional boundaries. This is not insanity. This is bored anger. Big difference. He knew right from wrong. He knew how to collect the shells, to clean the guns, to burn the clothes and shoes, to hide the guns, and to wait for his Miranda rights. Despite all of that, Bodhi's family believed that the death penalty should not be an option. Leah spoke of her daughter's strong moral code, which she felt Bodhi adopted from Gandhi, and the famous phrase, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Bodhi was a firm believer in nonviolence, according to her mother, and she said she would have never wanted revenge. In light of this request, the prosecution removed the death penalty. It relieved Bodhi's family that her legacy of peace and nonviolence had been protected, but they wanted justice to be done for Cody and Bodhi. But that would have to wait yet again for more than 4 years. And Leah made a post on Facebook that said, quote, dragging on murder cases is cruel to the surviving families. This case has sat for 4 years. There has been no need for further investigation. The public defender attorneys declared that they were ready for trial. Then 4 months prior to the agreed date, they cancel. Reason unknown. Please sign the petition, end quote. And she was passing one around for support in getting the ball rolling. She said, my fight for a timely trial is not for justice for Bodhi, though very important. That will eventually happen. though pathetically slow. I'm fighting for my son. It's for Zen. That we, he, and I, and the rest of our family can start the celebration of the 16 years we shared with Bodhi. When we talk, it is a series of updates on the case. Years of stagnation strangles the emotional growth of even the best families." End quote. Finally, that year in 2011, Cameron Thompson, who served as the men's lookout, took a deal and pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter, 2 counts of attempted robbery with a firearm, in exchange for a reduced sentence, agreeing to testify against his 2 friends, David and Colin, at trial. And yet the trial for the 2 other boys' involvement hadn't begun yet. It wasn't until 2014, and just as jury selection was underway, the trial came to a halt because the prosecution allowed Colin to take a plea deal to avoid going through this jury trial. Good choice, I guess. At this point, according to what I read, the families had attended 76 hearings. 76. I'm really glad they were getting some closure. And now for Colin's sentencing. Despite the judge's belief that robbery was not a motive for the crime, he did not find evidence to support the coercion of Colin by his co-defendants or by any other parties. The judge believed Colin had committed the double homicide just for fun. That's it. And as Judge Thomas read the sentence for the convicted murderer, Colin McLaughlin, he told the victims' families that he felt their pain. His words were met with a standing ovation. The cheers from the courtroom and the families and the supporters, they rejoiced in justice being served. Although Bodhi and Cody would never return, at least this was something for their families to hold on to. Colin's green prison uniform at his trial was a sign to the Daily Press that he was in protective custody. He remained largely silent. He showed little emotion throughout the proceedings. However, Zen revealed that there were moments when he would smirk or stick his tongue out and laugh, and he behaved like an animal. The verdict made Zen feel a sense of catharsis, knowing that this person responsible for his suffering was finally being brought to justice. The judge later said that this case had the most victim impact statements out of all the trials he had ever sat in on his career. Cody's mom and dad were among the 6 family members who gave victim impact statements. They were joined by Leah and Zen, of course. Cody's mom, Pam, was trembling with emotion. Her voice was breaking, and she said, "If you had such a fascination with death, you should have killed yourself." Cody's dad said that Cody was my hero, my friend, and my son. Leah couldn't help but cry. There were tears streaming down her face, and her words were filled with pain and with sorrow. She said, "Bodhi was my sunshine, my spring, my joy, my laughter." Her voice was trembling at this point, and she said, "I will never get to see her in a high school graduation gown or in her college cap and gown or walking down the aisle in a beautiful wedding dress. The day she died, my world went gray." Zen expressed his deep admiration for his sister. He described her as brilliant and said that when she passed away, the world became less bright. Leah said without a trial, there will be things about Bodhi's death that she will never know because of the plea bargain. Colin was sentenced to life without parole. What about the other 2 perpetrators? Well, it wasn't until 2016 that a judge handed down the sentence for Cameron, 15 years to life in prison, with nearly 10 of them already served. For more than 8 years, David Smith was incarcerated without making a plea deal or any arrangements. And then finally, when he was 28 years old, in 2016, he entered into a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder and was sentenced to 2 25-year sentences, so 50 years in prison with the possibility of parole. I wanted to mention this before I ended the video. I found out from Facebook that Leah actually began renting out her and Bodhi's dream house on Airbnb as a vacation home in 2012 after the renovation was complete. She called it Bodhi's Lake House. She had a Facebook dedicated to it. I wanted to show you pictures of the home that Bodhi had always dreamed of. And guess what? She was right. The water did reflect off the ceiling of the living room. Leah took a video showing that Bodhi knew what she was talking about. So here it is. The home was so awesome. The roof was even made of a special material that changed color when it got wet. So if it rained, it would go from gray to blue. How cool is that? I cannot get over that. I loved that. Look at this house. It's huge. It's 4 bedrooms, 3 baths. It's on the lake. It has a pool, kayaking, jacuzzi, a little tower that I love on the back left. The interior is just gorgeous as well. At one point, Leah did put it up for sale, but it didn't sell. And she was actually happy about it at that point because she said she shared so many memories with Bodhi there. Every room was a part of her. but eventually it did sell in 2020 for around $600,000. It was beautiful. The living room had a fireplace. There were huge bathrooms, a little bar area, even fireplaces inside bedrooms. And through Facebook posts, I got to know Leah better. She's a special person. She raised an amazing little girl. And I'm so sorry for everyone involved in this case. I'll never forget Cody and Bodhi. And I hope you never do either. I also couldn't help but notice this cute little white dog on Leah's Facebook page, but there was a story behind him. I came across a post that said that his mother dumped him at birth, and Leah saw him 3 months after Bodhi passed. He needed a bottle every hour, night and day. His little cry in her dresser drawer brought her out of her loss of Bodhi to care for him. She said, "I did not save him, he saved me. He has turned into an amazing little companion. He knows he's a family member, not just a pet." So cute. I really think sometimes those things are meant to be. Another thing I want to mention before closing is that Bodhi and Zen's father passed away in December of 2020. Zen posted this on his Facebook. He said, "Last Saturday, my father, Rick Potter, passed away. As a psychologist, he improved so many lives. As an explorer and photographer, he visited so many places. As a good man, he touched so many hearts. He died in his sleep after surviving 1 stroke, 2 heart attacks, and 3 chest and intestinal surgeries, and almost no regrets." I know we didn't hear much about her dad, so I just wanted to give my condolences for that as well. I decided after my conference and talking with some amazing creators that I'd like to use my platform to provide a short message at the end of my videos, something that we can take away after I tell these stories, a lesson, something to hold on to. Maybe it can change just one person's life. So for this one, I think the main takeaway can be Bodhi's words that Leah heard in her heart. She felt Bodhi didn't want her to feel guilty because she warned her so many times not to go to the bunker. Parents aren't here to keep us from being happy. They give us advice to keep us safe because they love us. And a mother's intuition can be a real thing. So if you're a mother, trust it. And if you're a teen, trust your parents. Heed their warnings and be careful. Leah didn't want Bodhi's death to be in vain. So remember her. I know I will. I just want to thank you all so very much for watching another one of my videos and listening to Bodhi and Cody's story. Thank you all so very much. I will see you in my next video. Bye.